Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank Gray, and this afternoon I represent the University of Brighton and Film Hub South East. And today is a very special event at the Duke of York Cinema. Agnès Varda has made films for over 60 years. She has a very special and vital place within so many histories. The history of French cinema, the history of women's cinema, and the history of world cinema. Her work is defined by an holistic approach. She has scripted, shot, edited, directed, and produced so many of her films. Her approach epitomizes the very nature of the artist's film. As a photographer, filmmaker, and artist, many themes and interests emerge. Family, friendship, identity, and relationships. Place, play, and work. Time, memory, and history. Painting, photography, and surrealism. Dreams, mysteries, and collage. Color, movement, and rhythm. Puzzles, and humor. More recently, she's become very engaged in the issues and practices of film archiving, film digitization, and film restoration. It is her joyous curiosity which continues to inspire her work. She says, "I live in cinema, and I'm a very young artist." Last year, the exhibition Agnès Varda in California Land was presented by the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. For Brighton Festival, Agnes has brought her beach to Brighton. Her installation, Beaches, Beaches, can now be seen at the University of Brighton Gallery. Her 5-hour film essay, From Here to There, will be screened tomorrow, and her feature film, Vagabond, next Sunday. Today, as you know, she's going to speak about her work. So on behalf of Ali Smith, Brighton Festival, Cine City, and the Duke of York's, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Agnès Varda to Brighton, and to Brighton's House of Cinema, the Duke of York's.
Thank you for welcoming me so warmly. Frank was in the dark, you didn't see him. That's the spot they organized to see people. The funny thing is that I've been invited by Agnès, Bed Burgers and people I didn't know, but I ended up being one of the oldest filmmakers still alive and still working. Among the oldest, and I'm invited in the oldest movie theater in the UK. Still active. There have been other filmmakers, other film theater, but that's the only one still working like I do. Cannot be compared to a film theater, but there is a connection that I appreciate. And I was impressed that the film that has been invited is not the most known, but it's the first film I made, La Pointe Courte. Some of you have been maybe curious to see it. It's a curiosity in a way, because I made it, as Frank said, more than 60 years ago. I was 26, I knew nothing about films. Had not been to the university and had not been assistant. And I wrote the first film like out of the blue and thinking it would never exist. And we made it, I made it, and it became bizarrely a real film that I had not even hoped to be seen. And it's interesting that people still see it and say it's beautiful, and because it's black and white, it deals with light and the time of this fisherman. And this is true that light is our tool, the first tool of cinema. Alors, sometimes I speak French. I will try to. Most of the time in these encounters with audiences, sometimes students in university, sometimes other kind of people, you don't seem to be students, but you seem to be interested. So I will start with an excerpt of a film that is in a way introduces me, because it's the first film where we can see not my family, but what came before me. And by chance I met that man, and he became a kind of virtual, wonderful father to me. But when I show that excerpt, it's not so much to show the man than to say that my way of working, my point of view about how to film, is that filming should relate the impression, the emotion. And for that meeting, when I really met him, I got so excited, so perfectly happy, because the surprise got me that I tried to make a shooting 2 or 3 days after having met him. And I wanted to reproduce that, comment on dit, febrility, no, feverish. I was feverish, happy and excited, so that little piece you'd see reflects that, which means I really tried to find the form and the shape representing the feelings and the ideas. So can we have the Yanko and Zep? Julia is helping me very nicely. She knows my plan. And she never makes me say, let's say that. Because we are working most of our time on Mac. And this is a PC, so it doesn't connect the same speed. Not something against PC, no, it's just that it's not the same system. No. Takes a little more time. Oh,
I delegated my friend Tom to get information and introduce me, without knowing what kind of fish I might find. Imaginary families, I love you. I dedicate to you the sketch which will follow. We will play for you the avuncular recognition of how Uncle Yanko acknowledged his niece and niece.
Varda!
Monsieur Varda? My businessman would like to meet you, Agnès Varda.
Agnes, you see the doctor of Eugène? Vous êtes la fille d'Eugène? You are the daughter of Eugène? Yes, sir. Is he called to Eugène, what?
Take two.
He's saying he called to Varda, to Eugène? Vous êtes la fille. Vous êtes the daughter of Eugène, Varda? La même chose. Je voudrais que ce soit juste gâté. Tu es Mendes. Tu es vraiment des têtes uniques.
It's really an introduction to my life, but later it tells me I don't know if you call it genealogic tree of my family, the Greek part of my family. My father was Greek when he was born and became French, so I've been born French because my mother was French. I just have some Greek roots somewhere in me. Sometimes I don't know exactly to say what happened between each film, but how the ideas come, why we do this and not another thing. And Frank said that, I have a quote, I say, I'm an old, very old filmmaker, I became a young artist because I switched to visual art. And there is an excerpt in which you will see how how that switch started. It started with a documentary that I made about the gleaners. You know, the people who eat what we throw away. I followed the gleaners in the fields, in the market, in cities when you see this market, they come twice a week. I don't know if you see the same. They come twice a week directly from the farm or the field, and they sell. And then they sell the eggs, the thing. And when they fold everything, then they go to their truck, but there is a lot remaining on the floor. And between the time and that and cleaning the street, there is a little time where people come and glean in the cities. And they clean in the fields, because the gleaning really means to grab something that other people have thrown away. It's not picking, it's not going to the flea market, it's not choosing. It's really getting abundant things and abundant food. So I was working on this subject. I was very, very interested. That was in the year 2000. And I was late in the season. I couldn't do the watermelon, I couldn't do the peaches, but it was the time for the potatoes. So I went and met the peasant who organized and grow potatoes. And you will see that it was a very interesting experience, because the law of the market, what they call the law of the market, explained that they just cultivate and sell. This is ready for the market. And there is a man explaining that. And that's the way it came, that doing that documentary, and I finished the documentary, it came out, but when years later, in 2003, I was invited for the first time at the Biennale of Art in Venice. I had something ready in my mind, and that's the way I switched to visual art. So that little excerpt, tu peux donner les glaneurs, c'est pas le numéro, tu vois, les glaneurs, les glaneuses. J'ai pas le numéro. I have to list but not the number.
C'est sûr qu'on a les glaneurs? On n'a pas les glaneurs.
Si, c'est le début de Patate Utopia. C'est le 1, 2. Ça s'appelle Patate Utopia. De glaneurs à Patate Utopia.
Alors, c'est le 1. C'est le 1, le 2, c'est le 2. Je mets le 1. À propos de Patate Utopia.
Voilà. Madame Potato.
Voici comment j'ai été amenée à filmer des patates en forme cœur.
Les plants de pommes de terre, après le défanage, présentent des sillons et des buttes prêts pour l'arracheuse.
Dès que la machine est passée, nous pouvons après glaner. Glaner, même tout le champ.
Là, il y en a beaucoup, là.
Les grandes surfaces demandent un gabarit bien précis, une grosseur bien précise.
Nous, on vend des pommes de terre d'une grille 45 mm à 75, tout le reste, tout ce qui est au-dessus est automatiquement jeté.
Franchement, ça la bouffe, je t'ai caché. Si t'es pas ouf, censé, y'a de quoi te fâcher. Si t'es pas venu dehors par ta femme lâchée, en galère, pendant que tu perds, tu seras content de savoir où se récupère la nourriture.
Je vais prendre un peu pour voir les enfants.
Quand je vois tout ce gâchis là, et puis il y a des gens qui ont rien à manger, c'est lamentable de voir ça.
Bon, ça me sauve pour le moment. C'est dur, c'est tout.
Ah voilà, je repars avec mes 30 kilos. Et il y a encore quelques tonnes derrière moi que les gens pourraient ramasser, mais qui ne savent pas où ça se trouve.
Quelquefois, ce sont des enfants qui donnent le signal.
Lundi, des patates, mardi, des patates, mercredi, des patates, jeudi, des patates, vendredi, des patates, samedi, des patates aussi, dimanche, gratin de pommes de terre.
déchets, on trouve des très grosses. Hein. Vous voyez? Il y en a même qui sont difformes, forme de cœur.
Ah ben le cœur, le cœur. Le cœur, je veux.
Quelle surprise! J'étais contente. Je les ai aussitôt filmés de près. Puis j'en ai ramené à la maison. Je les ai regardés. J'ai attendu qu'elles vieillissent, qu'elles sèchent, qu'elles se ratatinent. Des germes et des radicelles. J'ai recommencé à les filmer et à les photographier. Ensuite, je les ai fait respirer.
Et la voilà à Venise. Car Hans Ulrich Obrist l'invite à la Biennale d'art de 2003 dans son projet Utopia Station. Chaque artiste devait créer une affiche et une œuvre. Agnès, ravie de côtoyer d'autres artistes, comme Boltanski, a créé un costume de patate, une affiche et un triptyque. Patate Utopia.
Et il fallait 700 kilos de patates pour couvrir le sol au ras des écrans. C'était la première fois que j'installais 3 écrans. You see, you laughed when these hard-shaped potatoes started to breathe, but this is the shape of a real heart. And we know that it's so, the heart is a sign of affection, love. You know, it's known all over the world that there is a shape that makes sense. And I thought that discovering myself, the beauty of these old hard-shaped potatoes growing again, and I started to film them. I found them beautiful. I thought that it's the most modest vegetable, and I could find the beauty of it and make it like the glory of potatoes being old. And this is true that beauty, you can bring beauty where you feel like. I felt like I was filming beautiful potatoes. The beauty has been a theme also that I cared about early in my life. In '61, I made a film. I would say the subject is the beauty and the death, classical theme in painting. And I was happy to find a woman that I met. She was doing a little piece in the first film of Jacques Demy, Lola, a beautiful film. And I noticed that girl in the background. She was in the club of his films. And I met her. And she represents for me the total beauty. A beauty not modern. In the 60s, everybody was thin and with little dress, and that was a woman like in 1900, beautifully tall and looking like these beautiful German beauties, you know, with tits and ass and everything to look gorgeous. And the subject that was that she's expecting the results of a medical exam. And obviously at that time, and even now, people are afraid of cancer. So it's the time that she waits to know the answer. And I made a film absolutely, specifically in 90 minutes. And I followed her minute after minute, feeling that the time can be, you know, objective because that's a clock, that you cannot cheat with it. And you feel it's subjective because sometimes you feel the time is very long, sometimes very short. So the film is about these 90 minutes in which she waits. And in the middle of the film, since she's a singer, she has a rehearsal with her composer, with Michel Legrand, and by the way, he plays himself his role. And she's in a rehearsal, they bring her a new song, and that gets on her feeling so strongly that you see, that time, she decided to change. And this is the middle of the film, after 45 minutes, that's the scene, in which you will see that from being a kind of beautiful doll that everybody looks at her and say she's beautiful, but she's not gifted, all these things. Then you will see she will go out and she will meet the reality of life. Like what people do to make money, how people are on the street, how she looks with her hat. And it's a very turning point of the film. The film is called Cleo from 5 to 7, and I did it in 61 with the beautiful woman named Corinne Marchand and the music of Michel Legrand. C'est le deuxième, le troisième, c'est très au début.
C'est le premier ou le deuxième extrait?
C'est le premier extrait. Après, il y a...
Sans toi, c'est trop. Je ne peux plus. C'est affreux.
Mais qu'est-ce qu'elle a?
Elle est fatiguée. Et puis vous savez, le mot cafard est maléfique. C'est comme le mot corde.
Un mot de rien, encore qu'il arrive. Mais c'est une belle chanson, je vous assure. Avec ce cri d'amour, vous allez révolutionner le monde de la chanson.
Vraiment? Mais qu'est-ce que c'est qu'une chanson? Combien de temps dure-t-elle?
Caprice.
Caprice, caprice. Vous n'avez que ce mot-là à la bouche. Mais c'est vous qui faites de moi une capricieuse. Tantôt je suis d'une idiote, une incapable, une poupée de son. Maintenant je vais faire une révolution avec des mots macabres. Mais c'est ça ma chanson de charme. C'est avec ça que je fais un succès. J'ai réussi comme un enterrement avec beaucoup de monde. Vous vous servez de mes nerfs, vous m'exploitez. Allez-vous-en. Non, c'est moi qui parle. Quand je vais vous faire avoir, la chance est finie. Laissez toutes les chansons. Je vais être toute seule.
Mais je sais pas ça fait.
Tu ne me l'as pas appris pour que j'ai besoin de toi. Tu ne m'as jamais fait confiance, tu crois que je n'ai pas de talent. L'osé lui m'a remarqué la première fois que je suis passée aux Andorres. Il a aimé ma voix tout de suite.
Ta voix? Laisse-moi rien.
Tu me détestes, on dirait.
Encore un truc pour qu'on te dise qu'on t'aime. Enfin, bientôt.
Toi, tout le monde me garde. Personne ne m'aime. Personne. Dans quel état elle se met? Je me mets en noir. Pour vos chansons, je serai dans la note. Un cri d'amour. Seule l'aide et les vies. Voilà. Si je pouvais m'arracher la tête avec. Tu veux que je vienne? Non. Je vais être seule. Cléo, je vous rappelle que c'est mardi. Le mardi 18, je fais ce qui me plaît. poupée est toujours la même. Et ça pour ridicule. Je ne peux même pas lire ma propre peur. Depuis 2 jours, je pense que tout le monde me regarde et moi, je ne regarde personne que moi. C'est la seule.
Ne poussez pas sur les canaux. Elle ne souffre pas. Nous reverrons le jour, vivante, dans un moment. Venez, petit grenouille, on va vous changer les corioles. 3e grenouillard.
Well, you see, because she's confronted, these people do that to make money, you know, and everybody comes and gives money. And because I've been always observing people in the street, and that's why, the same way I've made a film about the gleaners, which is a category that nobody cares about. And in my life, I did fiction and documentaries, because I always say that the fiction is something you invent. Cleo was totally invented. I wrote the screenplay, the dialogue, I filmed the film. It's an artist's work, creation. But I say that, you know, doing documentary is the school of modesty. In between 2 fiction or 3 fiction, I go back to documentaries because you have to be at the service of the subject. And you have to be really attentive to what's happening, how people behave. And I'm impressed because I love documentary, really. And I will show an excerpt of a film I did recently in 2005 or 6 called The Beaches of Agnes. Maybe some people have seen it. It's a film in which I try to tell, in a way, tell my life, but through the meetings I had in my life, the people I met, the work I did, my comment on dit, conviction, engagement, je sais pas comment dire, commitment to causes like, you know, the freedom of people. Feminists struggled to get the freedom of deciding if we want children or not, and a lot of subjects that I treated in The Beaches of Agnes, my love for painting, except of my film. And one day, I thought that as part of my memories, I should go back to the house of my childhood. And that was a very personal trip to my childhood, and maybe I would remember things. And we were 5 kids, I would have memories of where we lived and all that. And you will see in the next excerpt that I got, when I was doing that memory travel trip, whatever you call it, and I got caught by a subject. I became a documentarist right away. And so you see the visit of my childhood house in Brussels. Non, c'est juste après celui-là. Là, il y en a encore plus. Ça s'appelle les plages. C'était là. Voilà. On vous parle des plages. Il y a quelque temps, j'ai reçu une lettre d'un docteur qui disait, je ne sais pas comment il l'a su, j'habite la maison de votre enfance, je vais la vendre, est-ce que ça vous ferait plaisir de la revoir? Alors j'y suis allée à Bruxelles, rue de l'Aurore donc, avec ma petite caméra, direction de maison d'enfance. J'ai dit au propriétaire, commençons par le jardin. Je le retrouve pareil, mais mal soigné, avec les murs de briques peints en blanc. Je connais parfaitement la forme des bassins, surtout celui en forme de poire. Et il y avait aussi un petit pont de ciment. Le jardin est bien là, mais pas l'émotion. Aucun souvenir de jeux ou de larmes. Je sais des choses. Ce sont celles que maman m'a racontées. La voilà, en robe de dimanche, près du petit pont. Au puce de Bruxelles, hier, j'ai acheté 2 couteaux tout à fait oxydables, comme ceux qu'elle nous envoyait nettoyer dans la terre du jardin. Elle disait, faites-le bien, de haut en bas. Je l'ai fait raconter à Yolande Moreau dans une cuisine imaginaire.
C'est ça la vie. Quand j'étais petite à la campagne, dans les Ardennes, ma mère nous envoyait nettoyer les couteaux dans le jardin. Alors on enfonçait la lame dans la terre, comme ça, pour les frotter, de haut en bas.
Dans la maison, de bas en haut, je retrouvais des détails qui me parlaient. Près de ce vitrail, je revois maman qui pleurait le jour de la mort de la reine Astrid, dont elle collectionnait les photos. Avec son mari le roi Baudouin, en tenue de soirée, en tenue de visite aux pauvres, ou enlaçant un enfant colonisé du Congo belge. Astrid a été la Lady Di des années 30, avec la même fin tragique, morte dans un accident de voiture, en pleine jeunesse, en pleine beauté. Après, j'ai demandé à monter dans ma chambre, au 2e étage. La chambre des 3 filles était devenue leur salon et notre terrasse était bien là. J'ai filmé comme une brute, c'est nul. On voyait toujours l'abbaye de la Cambre et notre jardin vu d'en haut. J'avais envie de retrouver où étaient les lits de mes 2 sœurs et le mien. Lui, il avait envie de présenter sa collection de trains miniatures.
J'ai acheté que des trains en Suisse.
Pouvez-vous identifier si chaque wagon est ancien ou si c'est un modèle repeint?
Absolument. Mais ça, c'est comme un expert en automobile qui n'est pas tout de suite, si c'est pas la couleur d'origine, qui a sur un véhicule qui est vivant d'occasion. Ce que j'ai acheté de plus cher, qui faisait quand même 15 000 francs belges aux années 80, c'est une pièce en laiton. Maintenant, si je la mets en vente en Suisse, elle fait 80 000 francs belges. C'est fabriqué qu'à 150 exemplaires.
Et ça, là?
Une voiture de l'Orient Express, 3 000 francs. Non, là, je suis sur le train de même.
Vous vous êtes marié récemment? Quand?
Il y aura 2 ans, mois d'août.
Vous ne dites pas qu'ils vendent un wagon et qu'ils achètent un diamant?
Oui, mais ils commencent à revendre, vous savez.
C'est un capital. Actuellement, bon, la collection doit se faire pour 2 millions de francs belges.
2 millions? C'est de la passion.
Entre nous, on s'appelle l'énoragerie. La définition de l'amateur de train, qu'il soit miniature ou qu'il soit réel, c'est d'être un ferrovipâtre.
Ferrovipâtre? C'était rigolo cette rencontre. Et comme c'était un cas un peu rare, j'ai été aspirée par ce couple et par la collection des trains. Côté maison d'enfance, c'était loupé. De toute façon, j'en avais été séparée par la guerre. Well, you see, that's what I'm saying, that when you get the disease of loving making documentaries, it gets to you. And in a way, I thought, look, the audience, if I made the film, if they had heard about my bed was here, the curtain was here, my sister did this and that, I mean, it's much nicer and much more interesting to listen to this. I'm totally addicted to Little Train because it's rare, you know. I shouldn't miss the opportunity to film them. So documentary is one thing. I like to observe things, but we need imagination also. And near my place in Paris, I live Rue Daguerre among one of those who invented photography. I was a photographer at the time, and maybe I should. Should I show something about it? As I was a photographer, I hesitate, really. But I will show you first something that is near my place, and there is a big plaza, big turning with a lot of avenues, and there is a lion. Tu peux me chercher le tombe du gougou? Non, le lion volatile. C'est après Patatutopia. And there is a statue, very famous statue, like always related to somebody who won a battle, some of the wars of all time, in Belfort. And the Lion of Belfort is big and green and in the middle of the place. And I've read things about it. And people that I loved a lot which were the surrealists. André Breton had decided that monuments of Paris should be changed and that we should change the size of something. And about the lion of Belfort, he said that we should give him a bone to bite. And I thought, well, that's a nice idea, why not to do it? So I decided to make a little film about that lion, and telling a story in which a young girl, Julie Depardieu, who is trying to learn about reading cards, reading tarots, meets a guy who works nearby in the catacomb, but he's doing little tricks. So they meet. And I don't know if the excerpt shows what they do, but suddenly they are in the middle of the place. And please watch the little piece of Le Lion Volatile. Volatile means in English, volatile, I guess. Quel bel os!
Quel os?
Je ne sais plus.
À demain?
Oui.
Faut que j'y aille.
Gugu, for me, is much better in that class. In that class, they lie, but it's difficult to keep them, you know, they escape. And, si tu peux chercher ton book, there was a cat. I'm known for loving cats, like many people. I had many cats, and some of them have even forgotten their names and forgotten the fact that they were multiplier. They had a lot of cat babies, and then later. And there was a cat I loved very much called Zgugu. That cat remained with us and was very loved by Jacques Demy and me. And when that cat died, I was not there. My son Mathieu said that he buried the cat in the garden. And then when I went there, and we were too late, I said, it's not enough. That cat deserves something. And I decided to make a real film about the grave of Zgugu. And I thought it deserved something very... So, you will see, I did an animation. The music is from Steve Reich, but animation is made like in the old time, you know, one after one filming. It has nothing with, comment on dit, digital, see? It's not a special effect, it's handmade. But the little cat does have a grave. Then I did animation, then we rented something to go on the tree, and then we rented an helicopter. And you will see that going far away, then we see the whole world. It ends up that I felt, well, what is the life of a cat, but what is the life of anybody here? Seen from far away. everything disappeared. So this is the philosophical grave of the cuckoo. Philosophical film of the grave of the cuckoo. Très bien, merci. Nothing seen by far, but each life is so important, each death also. And I go very often in the island of Noirmoutier, facing Nantes, I don't know, on the west side of France. And in this island I noticed that there are more widows than in other places, because of a lot of fishermen die in the sea or accident and being myself a widow, I would have opportunities to speak with them, speak with some of them. And I noticed that in the society, in the media, in the films, they very rarely speak about widows. They speak about out of workers, they speak about everything. All kinds of categories, farmer, workers, student. But I never seen a documentary about widows. And I thought it's not so much the subject for an artist. You have to find a way, you have to find a form of telling. Because I can speak to some widows, sure, and I can make a documentary about that, but I tried to make something that would allow us to listen to each of them. And I made a drawing of a dispositif, I don't know, this way of disposing the thing. And I met many widows. Obviously, it's an example, I met 14 widows, 13, because I don't speak, but I had discovered these little cameras when I did the cleaners. I was meeting people, poor people, they wouldn't like to see a crew come, with strong material and caps and, sunglasses and speaking loud. I thought I should really have the more discreet way, so that's how in 2000 I learned to use these wonderful little video cameras, big like this or bigger, but easy to use. And in many cases, to meet the cleaners, I was alone with my little camera, and if they allow me to come, I say, can we come later with somebody else would do it? who would do the sound, and a better DP, director of photography. And so I was going to this. So for the widows, the meetings I made where I was or alone or assisted by somebody to do the sound. And since they knew I was in the island and I was widowed, they would sort of share with me some of their emotion. And it ended up to be called The Widows of Noirmoutier. This is a piece which was in an exhibition, Noirmoutier exhibition. And they tried to make it in a film, continuous. It doesn't work so well, but I will show you the way I presented the widows.
Exposé à la galerie à Boucaïa, à Nantes, à Gand, puis à la Fondation Cartier, les veuves de Noirmoutier. Agnès Varda y est cinéaste, vidéaste et installe des émotions en un espace intime et collectif à la fois. L'image centrale est un film en 35 mm. Éric Gauthier, à la caméra, a cadré le cortège des veuves au son du violon d'Amy Flamère et de la mer calme. Tout autour, sur 14 écrans, des dames de Nil, toutes veuves, qu'Agnès a filmées en tête-à-tête. Elles sont muettes, mais on peut les entendre. Chaque chaise avec des écouteurs correspond à une veuve. Chaque visiteur peut l'entendre.
J'entends quelquefois des gens qui disent qu'ils parlent à leur mort, qu'ils leur répondent non, moi, non, pas ça. Non.
Là, ça fait 13 ans qu'il est parti, mais je peux vous dire que, comme je leur dis, c'est comme si c'était hier. Hein. Surtout le soir.
Le manque, c'est le manque de toucher, c'est le manque... Pour l'instant, si tu veux, la maison est encore pleine de la présence de Thierry, de son odeur, de ses... On a mangé il y a 2 jours des haricots verts qu'il avait achetés au marché, c'était encore... C'est encore tout récent, quoi.
It's difficult because it's always difficult to... showing excerpts, you know, is difficult. And as a filmmaker, as an artist, I show pieces because even it's not the full film or the full installation, this expresses better whatever I would say. I can tell how I met them, how we had to carry the table on the beach. And none of them asked. And I was trying to express different feelings about that table. Maybe it was a cercueil, coffin, maybe it was a table, maybe it was a church, maybe it was an hotel. I like when meanings are so ambiguous that everybody in the room or visit in the theater or in an exhibition place or in gallery invents its her or his explanation. Because I try to leave room for people to be themselves, not just to follow what I say. I never give explanation. This is the message of the film. You have to understand this and that. Even when I made a little comment about the grave of the cat, I should have said nothing because it's obvious that from above, the grave of a cat or the grave of a person is nothing. But in the same time, we care. So I try to express the contradiction, which is in all of us. I love sound as much as images. because it's true that whoever is watching something brings its own culture, age, feelings, way of thinking. So we don't know exactly what we do. We do the way I feel, and I try to say, is it shareable? And what comes out that you get the same way I felt, I never know. I try to have a language that's understandable, but also I have my own way of telling, and I never exactly know how it will become when other people see it. So I did a film about a girl in 1980, maybe 85, 84. And I was impressed by a lot of people sleeping outside. It was the beginning of really a lot of people sleeping outside, and I read in the paper, somebody died from the cold, or they found a dead body under a porch. And I was impressed. I said, well, people are suffering from, freezing. And this is a century when we have a lot of way of heating, electricity and solar things, and gas and gas oil and electric heating. We should no longer have people dying around us from the cold. So the subject got me. But then also, I was impressed because when I was young, the bums where people drank, old people drank under bridges, it was like a cliche. But the people going around were younger and younger, and on the road you could see, je ne sais pas comment ils s'appellent, the guys with, backpack, and just going around, not really knowing where they go. And then I noticed that young girls are coming on the road. And at the time, it was like in the last 3 years that I noticed that. So I decided I would make a film about a rebellious girl, a young woman who says, I don't want a society as it is, I hate everything, I don't want to work, I don't want to be told what I have to do. The typical rebellion that I've seen in many young people, feeling society is bad and they should escape, they don't want to work, they want to be free, and that thing of, I want to be free. The word freedom covers so many things. It can be political, it can be religious, it can be personal, but the need of freedom got these people. So I wrote a story of a young girl going around. I was absolutely lucky to meet a young woman, Sandrine Bonner, who had started with Piala in a film called À nos amours. I don't know if it came here. And so I met her when she was 17 years and a half. She came with her father because she was minor. She could not even accept and sign a contract. And she was a rebellious character. She was a rebellious girl. And she did so beautifully what I suggested her to do, that I didn't have to suggest anything, because the moment we started to have a young crew and small crew, because for the film, I couldn't find the money. When I go to a producer, and some producer, they say, what is the pitch? I say, well, she's rebellious, she's dirty, she says shit to everybody, and she dies in a ditch. So I didn't get a big enthusiasm. And I said, well, it will be a beautiful film, believe me. Nobody. So we had to produce ourselves and to find the money, to fight for money, and find a young crew involved in making a difficult, so-called difficult film. And the film was a beautiful experience, by the way. We were as cold as the subject inspired, because we didn't have a trailer to be around us, and we couldn't bring food, so it was difficult. We were outside. The little young Sandrine Bonner and the whole crew was, okay, we have to fight the cold and the smell, because we were filming some squats. And the real squats, the problem is not that they're poor, it's that everybody they stay, it smells very bad. And that's the way it is. And some of them They don't care about it, but most of the people in our civilization are clean and they don't stand the bad smell. They say, he's poor but he's clean, you know, like so, as if the thing we cannot stand is that. So I told my crew we will be in places where we have to pass the walls of smell, as some people say, they pass the wall of sound, you know, and be ready to meet and understand and be nice to people who don't have the same values about cleanness. So we shot, and the girl is meeting people. She's meeting people because she needs, sometimes she needs to just a little work, sometimes she tries to get something. And I noticed, because I went around to prepare the film, people hate foreigners, you know. If somebody approaches a farm, they send the dog, or especially if women are alone in the farm when the man is working somewhere. They send the dogs, they hate people, and especially women, you know. What is a woman on the road? So I made a lot of scenes, and of what the people she meets are people who are outside, so garage people, workers on the road, masons, building things on bridges, you know, because she's not supposed to enter any place. I remember I had taken as a hitchhiker girl, and she was really in a bad state, but she was nice, and I said, okay, I invite you for lunch, let's stop, and we stopped at a restaurant. The moment we entered, they said, she doesn't enter here. I mean, like, no way, because she looked bad, she looked dirty, she was dirty, but they didn't even want her to come and pay her food, you know. So I understood that I have to tell all these encounters, but what was important is that she walks. She walks, and I did 13 traveling shots from right to left. She walks. She walks alone, and I was attentive to the noise under her feet, because you know, when you walk alone, after a while you hear your own steps. And in this film, sometimes she walks on dry leaves, or on the sand, or on the road, on the bitume, je sais pas comment on dit, asphalt, and sometimes with little stones, and in the country fields. So I want to show you one traveling shot, because there are 13 in the film. And the traveling shot not only is important, because that's what the film is about. 13 times she walks alone. On these shots, I always ask the musician, composer, Johanna Brusovich, to write something. Because I didn't want the music, but in many films, I hate the music. Because the music is like dubbing, you know, the meaning. You know, there is a nice scene, and then comes you are afraid, boom, boom, boom. I mean, some music are stupid, and some composers are good, but sometimes the way of using the music in film is stupid. And I didn't allow myself to do that. So the music is only when she walks alone. You have the music and sometimes the sound of the matter on which the sound of her steps. And the rest of the film, there is no music. Sometimes there's a radio, but no accompanying music to help you to understand. Or you understand and you feel, or you don't. But you don't need the music to explain you what you should feel. That's my idea. So this is one of the 13 traveling shots in which she walks alone on that music of Johanna. And you'll see they continue. It's like, you know, you see when she stops, the movement is not stopped, because she's not the whole thing. You know, the life continues. Life exists and the movement exists after her, if I may say so. This is so one of the traveling things. Tu l'as? Merci beaucoup. when we made that film, I really thought, since the producer didn't want to get into that sad story, and she really dies in a ditch, you know, she stepped on something, fall in the ditch, but she's frozen, she's hungry, and she's sick, and she dies. So we thought I had to do that film. I really believed in the story. I was lucky enough to have Sandrine play the role, and we thought it would be difficult. So we ended the film, again with difficulties in the editing, the finishing, and I showed it to some people, just started to say, maybe, and then there was a festival of Venice, a film festival, coming soon, and we have an entity in France called Unifrance, who is protecting French film, and they do screenings for all the festivals, you know. And so I asked Unifrance, can you show my film to Venice Film Festival? He said, no, it's finished, we have already all the screening booked. I said, well, am I allowed to do a screening myself somewhere? So I wrote to the man, or telephone, I wrote to the man of the Festival of Venice. I said, could you like to come to see my film? It's not in the Unifrance list, but maybe you'd like it. So he came to see it and said, oh yes, I want it for the festival. And we ended up that the film won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival, to my surprise. And then right away, it found distributors, theaters, you know, everything was okay. And among my films, this is the only real big success I had. When it started like something difficult that I had to carry in, everybody had to be involved and courageous. And that's the only film I made which went over 1 million spectators in France. I say sometimes it's a mistake in my life, because I was so successful I couldn't believe it. But it's never what you think, you know, it's a very difficult way of living, because I don't want to do things I don't like. I don't repeat films. I don't accept suggestions like, would you like to adapt a book? Would you like to adapt a play? Or, I think cinema should really start from nothing and become cinema. It should be written directly for film. Even though I love beautiful books, I've read beautiful books that could make, and some have made beautiful films, I still believe in the authentic, you know, direct work toward making a film. So, you know about my big success. I want to be modest, but it was such a surprise, I have to tell you. Then, I should come to... Attends, quelque chose d'autre dont je voudrais parler. Okay. No, I will show you something, because I'm lucky enough to have not really made a big career, not made a lot of money, but I'm known. I'm known here and there in the world. And I've been invited to show my film in Japan, and yesterday we met a woman from South Korea who stopped on the street. Oh, I'm Agnès Varda, I love your film so much. But I know, because I've been in South Korea, they love my films. I'm surprised, and they even love them in China. So I was invited, I have to show you that example. I was invited to China 3 years ago, and Julia was here, came with me, because I was invited to do installation and to show film photos, because I was in China in 1956 or 7, when China was not even recognized by the United Nations. So it was very important to have made photos at that time, because I think I explained in the story that the Cultural Revolution, you know, they threw a lot of images of that time. They asked me to come to show my installation and to show photos of that time. So, we will, if you agree, see a little story about what I did in China and how I wanted to be grateful to the sponsor, because always we have the problem, somebody has to pay, you know, that's the point. Somebody has to pay the production, somebody has to pay the trip to China, to just do the work and stay the things. But when it's done, like here, we have a little exhibition here, and I felt so happy to be invited in Brighton. I never heard of Brighton because I read The Rock of Brighton, Brian Greene novel, but I never came here. So to be invited somewhere that I don't know, and there is yesterday at the gallery there was a woman who said, I never heard of you, what a nice discovery. And I said, well, I never heard of Brighton. So. and of you. killed because I didn't know her. So, you know, it's a lot of stories happening that we discover the world discover us, and let's do a little tour in China, a little tour. And then, is that okay, Frank? Okay, there would be last excerpt then.
Nous sommes dans les années 50. Elle écoutait beaucoup du Vivaldi.
No, this is
Agnès Varda.
This is my life as photographer, but you no longer have the time. Let's go to China, it's more fun. You see some dragon, you will love it. Ça s'appelle le voyage en Chine. C'est un des deux derniers, ceux qui sont tout seuls. Oh, meanwhile, you know, the China wasn't discovered. I took my camera, I had a Leica, I had a Rolleiflex, and a big one even, like the old good time, you know, with the wheel and the whole thing. I was very heavy on me. When I came back, I had the back broken, but I spent 2 months in China, discovering a world that I knew nothing about. And you know, in 56, 7, they were all in blue. Everybody was in blue, the little uniform. Bosses, chiefs, and workers, all dressed the same. And they were happy about the revolution at the beginning, you know, if I may say so. And there was a lot of energy and... Okay, now let's meet the dragon then. J'ai rien annoncé. C'est devenu commun d'aller en Chine en avion et d'arriver dans un aéroport plein d'indications en sinogrammes, pictogrammes et idéogrammes. Cette fois-ci, des dragons dansants faisaient l'accueil. J'étais invitée à exposer mes installations récentes au CAFA, musée contemporain de Pékin qui existe depuis 4 ans. Avant de partir, avec Christophe Vallot, on a fabriqué dans ma cour la maquette d'un portique destiné à accueillir le public et à montrer les photos d'époque dans un présentoir original. Les bouts de bois d'un jeu de construction suisse, des pinces à linge et de la peinture rouge ont fait l'affaire. Christophe, une fois là-bas, a fait construire ce portique par des ouvriers avec qui il communiquait par gestes, avec des plans, avec la maquette et des prototypes au format réel. Voici la moitié d'une pince à linge. J'étais très fière d'être invitée dans ce musée et de voir que la maquette était réalisée en 12 mètres de large, posée dans ce grand espace silencieux. Je vais ajouter un peu de musique pour accompagner la visite des photographies. J'ai proposé aussi de montrer des photographies prises il y a 55 ans, quand la Chine n'était pas encore reconnue par les Nations Unies. Elles ont fait grande impression, puisque la révolution culturelle a fait disparaître la plupart des documents d'époque. Au même étage, il y avait mon exposition contemporaine. Voici des sacs exotiques pour nous, qui ont été peut-être pleins de riz et de farine de soja, et réutilisés ici pour apporter du sable. Il en fallait pour l'installation au bord de mer que j'avais créée au Crack à 7. Une photographie qui se met en mouvement pour amener la mer jusqu'au sable. Le sable donc était chinois, comme les patates chinoises au bas du triptyque patate Utopia,
Et comme tous ces objets, jeux, sacs et contenants en plastique de couleur vive, achetés en France, mais 100% made in China. Ici, dans le grand hall, en bonus facétieux de mon exposition, j'ai proposé d'adapter à la chinoise des plâtres de statues antiques offerts par une ambassade. Avant d'installer une tête de dragon sur un couple romain allongé, j'ai cherché dans Pékin une boutique qui en vendrait. On m'avait dit qu'en allant à la campagne, ce serait 2 fois moins cher. J'ai donc été jusqu'à une très lointaine banlieue et trouvé un lieu comme un décor de film. Dans un improbable hangar, j'ai rencontré une équipe de la fabrique, tous très jeunes. Il y avait les masques des 4 héros de légende du voyage du singe en Occident, le Si Yu Chi. Je prononce comme je peux. Et des dragons clignant de l'œil et de toutes les couleurs. J'ai choisi une gueule rouge. Et parmi les têtes de carnaval, une pimpante jeune fille pour une matrone romaine. Enfin, pour des cariatides égarées en Chine, j'ai demandé à Christophe Vallot de faire une 2 chevaux en contreplaqué, à laquelle je m'accrocherai pour remercier M. Citroën de Chine d'avoir été un des sponsors de mon exposition. If I understand well, Frank Gray said we should give some time if you have a question, and that will be the famous Q&A session. I'd love to have more light in the room if I could see some people. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the sound.
We have about 20 minutes, and we have at least 3 or 4 questions. Tim has a moving mic.
You propose that, Frank, but maybe there are no questions. I saw another.
Could I ask you, do you have a favourite amongst your films?
In here.
Do you have a favourite amongst your films?
Je comprends pas. Among other films?
Your films.
About mine? Well, oh, nice. Some like, you know, I like sad films. I'm a very joyful person, but I love to work on sad films, and I prefer the films I made in which you can cry. You see, you laugh, but this is my deep feeling. I love to make play of words, I love to enjoy, I like to have humor, but crying is not bad. Thank you.
I would like to know a little bit. Hello. I would love to know a little bit about your directing style and what approach you take, if you rehearse a lot with your actors before, or whether you take a slightly more organic approach.
I'm just trying. The question about how I direct?
Yes, yes.
Actors, you speak?
Yes.
You know, as you can notice in my filmography, I work quite rarely with actors. I've been working with actors and with non-actors also. About the actors, especially we spoke about Vagabond, I work on behavior. I remember with Sandrine discussing how she should put the backpack on and off, what she should do with her shoes if there is a nail, or how she should walk, how she should sit and eat sardine oil with her hands, or cook something and make a fire. Because the film Vagabond is a really behavior story, how you survive when you're alone with no money.
So this is a case. I didn't care about psychology and telling her why she's on the road and did she was raped or killed or pushed by somebody or had was thrown outside by her father. So I try not to speak psychology, I would say. In a film like Cleo from 5 to 7, which is that woman who is afraid of a cancer exam result, it's clear that the fear, she could feel the fear because the soul is about that. And like when you have a strong feeling, it comes out even if you do something else. So we spoke about that would be in her spirit and her soul. Whatever happens, sometimes she should like you get a fever sometimes, she would have a fever of fear and calm down again. But I don't rehearse that much, a little, yes. But then I do many takes. This is not like rehearsing. Trying to find out if the actor would get something out that just not can be explained, not be discussed. So sometimes after some takes, maybe because actors are tired, something comes out which is very interesting. It's like when I was a photographer, I would take portraits of people, I would ask them to pose. And after a while they get bored. And they become more interesting in a way because they stop to have defenses that I'm posing, should I be lifted? And then after a while they let it go, and even smiling, it's not a question of being sad, but after a while something comes out. And I think in directing actors this is true also. Some actors I work with, like Michel Piccoli, you ask the scene and he does it. So it's the Depardieu that you don't have to discuss or to rehearse. So some actors need to get into the scene more slowly. But I worked a lot with non-actors. And I love them because if you keep them in their surrounding, their own clothes, their own way of moving, their own habits, that they know where the drawer is, they know where the pencil is. And you ask them to say things that I wrote, but could be told by them. I like the way they look. I like really the faces of non-actors sometimes. It's not nice to say that because actors, it's their job and they do it with wine and they go to film school or to actor school. This is true and I respect them very much. But I don't have many ideas to write for specific actors. But I had the chance to work with, I did a film with Catherine Deneuve and Michel Piccoli called The Creature. And then I made a film with actors. If you like actors, you should see that. It's called The 101 Nights. It was when cinema was 100 years old. And I remember when I was young, people would not say, I go to see a film of Truffaut or a film of René. They would say, earlier, I saw Gabin, a film of Fernandel, a film of actors, So the new wave brought the idea of filmmakers, author films. But when I thought of the film 100 years old of cinema, I should bring a maximum of actors in that film. And I got all the possible stars, I got Depardieu, but I got Delon, and I got De Niro came and made a duo with Deneuve, and I got Lolo Brigida, and Belmondo, and Hanna Schygulla, Jeanne Moreau, everybody came. And they came, they were visiting Michel Piccoli and Marcello Mastroianni, so it was a really star film, star and stars. And that was my flop. So, what can I say? People want me to do, committed film, engaged film, related to social issues and the difficulties of being alive, etc. Which is true. It's really a thing in which I'm good, but I'm good. I know how to do it. And on that star system thing, I thought it was a funny film. Some people still say that's very funny. Because you see all these people coming, showing up and making a number. It's like an evening at the Oscar if they were funny. So, try to catch 101 nights if you are interested in acting.
Merci.
Merci.
Right. Good evening, Agnes. I was wondering, were there any other directors who influenced you? Est-ce qu'il y avait des autres metteurs en scène qui vous avaient influencé?
I tell the truth. I started in a bizarre way because when I made my first film, as I said before, I had not seen film 5 maybe at 25 years old, and I meet students 22 years old or 23. They have seen everything. They speak about Russian cinema, they know American film. They even saw the Icelandic film and South Korea. They know everything. They have seen all the Truffaut, all the Hitchcock, and I admire them because they feed their understanding with other people's film. But I must say, I didn't know about film. So when I did the editing, and to tell the truth, the editing was made by Alain René, who at the time was not even famous. He was an editor. And he would say to me, oh, that reminds me of Visconti. I said, who is Visconti? And he said, that time he said, oh, there is this, I should go to movies, we go to the Cinémathèque. I didn't know there was a Cinémathèque in Paris. So I was totally unaware of cinema. So they could not influence me. What influenced me is painting, and Picasso, his desire of inventing and changing, and I would say the way that Degas framed and the paint that you could see in some old paintings, and the revolution, you know, because when I made my first film, I had noticed that literature had totally changed, you know. You could write novel like in the 19th century. James Joyce had come, and Dos Passos, and Faulkner, and these people have changed literature. And so, and the painting, you know, the painters, when I was young, the painters had changed the world. And the cinema was still telling stories. So my point was to invent a radical way of making a difficult film, which is La Pointe Courte, as you should come from the village discussion to the couple to the village. So I was not influenced by filmmakers. Then René suggested me that I go to the Cinémathèque and look at some films. And I started to look at films. And I've seen incredible, beautiful films. And I really think if I had seen only 10 of these masterpieces I saw later, I would not have dared to start. So I was blessed by my ignorance.
There's a film of yours I really love about your husband, Jacques Denis, about his youth in Nantes.
Jacques de Nantes?
Yes.
Yes.
It has the beauty of a perfect dream. It's a wonderful film that I recommend to this audience if they haven't seen it.
Pardon, j'ai pas entendu la seconde part. Didn't Excuse me. Oh, yes. Go and see Jacques de Nantes. You know, the film, most of the time, as I said before, I wrote directly for cinema, and I wrote all my scripts. In the case of that film, Jacques Denis was sick, very sick, and he stayed at home and he was writing about his childhood. And, you know, writing, and every other day he would bring me the pages and I would read. And he was a child during the war and very excited about puppets and shows and musicals. And the more I was reading, one day I said, wow, incredible youth, incredible childhood would be a wonderful screenplay. And he said, would you like to do it? I said, well, do it yourself. He said, no, I cannot, I can no longer work, I'm too tired. But would you like to do it? I said, well, sure. And then I wrote a screenplay after his memoirs. But he hadn't written the dialogue or didn't tell too much about exactly what everybody felt. But I knew the fact, plus I knew his mother, his brother, and I thought, and I understood that he was in a way happy that I would do a film about his childhood, that he cared a lot about. And I found out, and this is true, that all his talent, all his aspiration all the characters he put together were all coming out of his childhood. So I made a film in many layers. One is just a story told in black and white, like in the 39 and 40, 41, about what happened to that family. And then I realized that I could allow myself, after one scene or one something happening, to show an excerpt of the film that had been inspired, a film of Jacques Demy inspired by his own childhood. And then also, because he was sick and in very bad shape, and I thought, what can you do for somebody you love and you want to be very near, as much near as possible when he's suffering and crossing a difficult time in his life and in his mind. And you would say, as a filmmaker, I could only be as near as possible, which means I filmed his skin, I filmed his eye, I filmed, a movement going from his hair to his eye, feeling that that was my way of expressing my, how can you be near, my attachment to grab whatever I could grab of him, still alive. So the film is at the same time beautiful stuff of childhood, of a child who has a vocation. The first title was Evocation of a Vocation, but then I called it Jacques Audenard because it's his name that was given by his mother, Jacques, instead of Jacques. And I'm glad you like that film, because the film means a lot to me and means a lot to using the cinema as not only as an art, but as a tool, of a way of living, a way of crossing life or being in life. And are you the only one in this room that has seen Jacques, was seen Jacques? Ah, thank you. I'm so glad that you see that film. Thank you. And the other, you have to see it.
There was one just around there.
J'entends rien.
Hello. I was interested in how you select your documentaries. When you talk about, is it all events from your own life, or strangers, or just situations in the world? How do you select your documentaries?
Excuse me, what? How I choose the subject for my documentaries, is that a question? Yes. Well, they come to me, you see. They come to me because life and problems of life and situation come to me. You don't go to your table and say, okay, what could I do a documentary about what, I don't see that like that. But like about the cleaners, I was one day taking a coffee in a cafe with somebody, and outside terrace, and it was like 1:30 in the afternoon, and it was just in front of the end of a market. And I started to see these people coming with plastic bags and picking things on the floor, on the ground. And then I saw the people of the city coming in with their green brooms. And he said, then I said, oh. And I said, they're getting what is from. And I remember that word, cleaning. And I went to the dictionary, and this is really getting what is thrown by people who abandoned it. Then there is that famous painting at the Ossé of Millet, the cleaners. But then I went to the country investigating about what is still to be cleaned, because wheat is finished, they have this incredible big machine, they cut things, they do, I don't know, with the mud, they almost do the bread, they separate everything from everything. And I thought I should put my interest in that. Then I started to visit all the markets that I could see in Paris. Then I called a cooperative of people who do apple, I made a first investigation by phone, then I went in the country. So the subject has come to me because I was impressed by these people getting food on the ground. And it happens the same way, as I told you, I was visiting my childhood home, and I bumped into this ferry, what do you call themselves, ferry path, something, and train crazy people. But Once I was in Munich, I saw an exhibition about a woman who collects photos in which you see a teddy bear. I was so impressed. I made a documentary and went to visit her in Toronto. Things come to me, and really not. When I was pregnant of my daughter Rosalie, I was impressed because at that time I was taking pictures in a very poor street called Rue Mouffetard. And comment on dit le quartier, le quartier. It's the neighborhood, thank you, was called La Mouffe. And I was impressed. I thought, look, I'm expecting a baby. I'm full of hope. And I'm visiting that street where you only see poor people, bums, drunken people, blind and drunk, bizarre people. You know, comment on dit boîte, limp. Oui, and the nose. And so I started to film. In 16mm, somebody lent me a camera 16. I started to film what I thought, and I asked Georges Delerue, who was not very known at the time, to make music on little haiku. And the meaning is, all these people have been newborn babies, and we have somebody has loved them, even not a long time. Somebody has kissed their belly, somebody has looked at the baby and said, oh, and that's what they became. So I made that film called L'Opéra Mouffe, out of what's happening to me. And it becomes also a documentary about the street 50 years ago, 55 years ago. So it's somebody I was asked to do. I was asked to do something about the caryatide, you know, the sculpture who hold the balconies. I was asked to do it, and I said yes, okay. In documentary, you know, you don't have that ego of a writer, of an author. You are the service of the subject. So I like the documentaries because I learn something. I get something out of filming these people I didn't know before or didn't know about how they behave. And even my first film, for those who saw La Pointe Courte, you know, the part on the fisherman is poorly made because I didn't have the direct sound and some difficulties, but I really documented myself about them. Then I wrote their story, but I had to meet them, and I was impressed by these people, so it gave me the idea to film them. I think I let it go, you know, where I am, where I go, things happen, or I noticed situation, or I made a film about squatters, you know. I was so impressed by these broken houses in which they get into it to live there for a while, and the way they live, and I made a little film called Wars of Squatters. But I'm not always in that, you know, the little lion of La Place d'Enfer Rochaud. I took advantage of the fact that because of repairing the lion, they took it out for a while. So I organized my shooting. The 2 last days were without the lion, and then they brought it back because I could not afford a crane. It's like 75 tons, it was. So, because I noticed it was gone, I said, oh, let's take advantage of the lion's gun. And I brought my cat. So it's, I try to be not programmed, you know. I don't have a list of what I should do. I have to attack that subject, or I should work with these actors. I love actors. Sometimes I feel, you know, I love Tilda Swinton, or I love Mary Streep. I love, well, Bob De Niro, I did a scene with him. I mean, a lot of young actors. You know, Xavier Dolan was doing incredible young film, but he's a beautiful actor also. Sometimes I feel I should ask some actors and write something for them. And then I don't program myself that way, you know, I wait. You know, Cleo, they asked me to make a film, and I was impressed by the people who were so afraid of cancer. So I thought, fear of cancer. But then the subject was really beauty and death. So, you know, a mixed impression, and it comes to me. I made also documentaries, I think. I have a little DVD, I made 17, so I don't have them all handy in my mind.
Merci.
Merci, Franck.
I'd like us all to thank Agnès Varda for giving us a very special opportunity.